Okay, we're back. It's part 2 of lesson 8. We've set up a nice little browse page with add to cart. So before we write the add to cart method, right now if we click our button, it's calling a method that doesn't exist. But I also want to kind of copy this form into the bottom of our product details page as well. So I want to make the change that Awais was asking about. Let's, instead of displaying the text of the photo, let's display the image. We'll get rid of our edit button, and we want to add our little add to cart form in here as well. We can also probably just change this to say product details at the top. So in our, let's open up our details, product details view. I'll change line 4 and line 8. So this maybe says product details. And I can get rid of my H4 tag on line 11. I don't need a heading that says details and a subheading that says product. The page heading can just say product details. That's good enough. Okay, so I've changed line 4, line 8, and I've removed so this will say product details here and product details here. Not critical features, but we're cleaning it up. So now in the photo, we want to display an image tag. If there is a photo, we probably should use an if statement. Here, I've kind of assumed all our products have photos. So our photo gets rendered down near the bottom of our file. On line, for me, it's line 47. Inside this DD, this data definition tag, it displays the name of our photo. So I'm going to replace that with this. If model.photo does not equal null, this is where we're going to put an image tag in. So our source is going to be the IMG folder that we created a couple weeks ago, and then our product uploads folder. So if we have a photo, we don't want to show the name of the photo. We want to display it as an image file. Okay, so I've modified the lines that are in blue. So now we've got our full-size image showing up. We could also make our category name clickable. That would then take the user back to the list of categories. I will skip that for today. Not really required. I want to remove the edit link, and I want to add our little add to cart form here. Our back to list, we can keep that. Oh no, we'll need to change that link because this tries to load the product index, which we don't want. That's a private page for administrators. So we're going to remove the edit link and we're going to change this link. So my edit link, I'm going to get rid of. In fact, I'll just get rid of this whole section for now. We'll delete that div at the bottom. We're going to put in our form, and we'll add a different back button that returns the user, kind of like hitting back in their browser. It takes them back to the same list of categories they were viewing previously. So I click, and if I don't want it, I basically just want to get back here. Just for starters, I'm actually going to copy the form. Let's copy the little form here from our browse page. I'm just going to take this form and I'm going to copy it. We'll have to tweak it a little, but let's just add that right to the product details page, the exact same form. It's going to go to add to cart. It includes the product ID, the quantity, and a submit button. So copy that whole form. We'll just paste it down here for a minute. Now there's one change we need to make right away. What change? You can see Visual Studio's a little bit hard to see, but there's one problem with this code. When we move it from the other page here, what's wrong with it? So copy your form from Browse to the bottom of the product details view. Right. Nick and Adam, you got it. Okay, so this P variable, it doesn't exist on this page. It exists in the Browse page, but not here. So instead of our P variable, we want to replace that with our model. And our error goes away. Remember, our model, it's declared at the top. The details page accepts a product model, a model of type product. Right here, very first line, model, a single product is the model for this view. So in here, we want the model.id. So here's our form at the bottom. Let's go in and see how it looks. And I've removed that back link, so we're going to have to add in a separate link to go back. So now we see our image. So it's not bad. We'll just do a couple of other quick things. Let's move this over, maybe over here. And then we want to add a backlink that just calls the browser history, kind of does exactly like the back button in our browser, just goes back to the previous page. So we'll just add a couple things to bump the form over here and put a back button below. So in my form, I think if we, let's see, can we add a class? Yeah, we can add a class to the form. If we use the class offset2, because all our labels are 2 columns wide, this will push our form over underneath the image, I think. Should bump our form over to the right a little bit. Yep. And then down here, after the form, I'm just going to add a little backlink that will call the browser's back button. I will paste this code for you. If I'm going too fast, you need me to slow down, just let me know. So if we can use a little JavaScript, if we call history.go, this takes us back to the previous page in the browser. So this will just give us a link at the bottom left that will return us to the previous page we were looking at. This should be everything we need. So here are our product details. Our image now shows up. We have a little add to cart button. And if I click back, it takes us to the previous page. So here's our form that goes at the bottom. I will paste this in here. Throw the link in the chat. And I can hang on for a minute in case you need to get caught up. It's not absolutely critical that we have the add to cart button in both places, but we want to encourage people to buy. So the easier it is, the more we prompt people to put things in their cart, the more likely it is they're going to buy things. So this is where our design and usability will influence our behavior of our users on our application. Okay, so at full screen, here's how it looks. We get the SKU, all the details, the image, and our add to cart button that also has validation that we can't click add to cart if we haven't chosen something. If I try entering characters, I'm not going to be allowed to. Right? As soon as I put in a number, my validation error goes away, and now I can add to cart. So we're done the UI components here. So we've got our browse page, and we've customized, allowed public access to product details. We've taken the scaffold. We've left most of it, but we've customized it so that it makes sense for an e-commerce shopping page. So our next step is we now are going to need to write this add to cart method in our store controller. Does anybody have any questions before we do that? And this method can get called from two different places. It can get called from here. The same method can get called from the previous page. Does anybody need more time to get caught up before we start with that method? So your next step is to open up your store controller. We've already probably got it open because we wrote the browse method. I also just want to look for a moment. So we're going to start working with our cart model here. So let's open up the cart model. Okay, what have we got? So when we add an item to the cart, let's just look at what the properties are. We're going to have a primary key that gets generated by SQL Server. We're going to store the product ID. We want to store a customer ID. We're going to have to talk about this one. The quantity. So the quantity is going to come obviously from our form here or here. Excuse me. We have a date created as well. There's one property that I missed here. there's something else we should add into this model. Can anybody think of what we might be missing? This will work, but there's another property we should add. So I want to add it to the model and run a migration. To update the database. So when someone's shopping, they put something in their cart, we want to know what product they picked, what the quantity is. There's one other important piece of information. Yeah, Mitch, you're on the right track. Right. So for this particular product, we want to know the price. And the reason we want to store the price is that the prices can change. So we can't just look up the current, I should go to think about this for a minute. Do we want to do this? It will make our life easier if we store the current price in case it goes on sale or there's a discount. So let's add a double called price. So Mitch, you're on the right track because with the price and the quantity, we can get the total. That's kind of what I was thinking. So let's add, I'll just put this in the chat, just a new property. So now, and this happens sometimes, we need to change our application. We've changed our model, but the model is now out of sync with the database, right? If we go and look at the cart model in the database, we don't have a price column. So there's a couple ways we could fix this. I could manually add the price column into my table, or I could do it through Visual Studio just by running a migration. So here's my beer store database. And if we look at the carts table, we have ID, product ID, customer ID, quantity, and date created, but there's no price column. So either I could go in here, I could go into the designer, and I could add a price as a double. That would be one option. But to make sure it syncs, I'm going to create a new migration and update the database from Visual Studio. So this is going to recognize, hey, our cart model, it's got a property that the cart table in the database doesn't have. And the migration will sync the database so it reflects the changes in our model. So I'm going to go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and open up my Package Manager console. I'll wait for my PowerShell to load, and I'm going to run the command add-migration, add cart price. So I'm just describing, with no spaces, describing the change I'm making to the database schema. We're adding a price field to the cart model and cart table. So I'll hit enter. And Visual Studio should generate a migration file. So it generates one time-stamped with today's date and time called add cart price. And the migration is going to add a column called price in the carts table with a default value of 0. So that's good. What do I need to do now in my Package Manager console to execute the migration and sync this change to my database? We need to run one more command. Yep, very good. You're all correct. It's great that you guys, Cole, Alex, Nick, it came to you so quickly. Update dash database. So it's run this migration. And if I refresh my database, I now have a price column. It lists it as a float. That's okay. I'm fine with that. I guess I could have used decimal, but this will work. So now our model in Visual Studio and our database in SQL Server, they're in sync again. So I ran add dash migration, gave it a name, and then we ran update database. You don't have to use the migrations. You could change your model and you could change your table manually. That would work as well. So make sure your database gets updated so that there's a price column here. And then we need to figure this out. We need to talk around the logic of the customer ID because it can be a little bit complicated. We've got a few different scenarios here. Right now, as we're shopping on our website, right, I could add something to my cart, but I'm anonymous. I haven't even logged in. And most sites will let you do this, right? I could go here. I can add something to cart. I'm not logged in here. Or I could put a ladder in my cart on Home Hardware site, but I'm not logged in here either. Right? I've got a quantity. Well, it wants to know my location before I can add it to my cart. So the question is, we want to store who the customer is. The problem is not everybody shopping on our site is a customer, or maybe they are a customer, but they're not logged in already. So we don't know who they are. If I'm logged in, right, if I log in first, then it's easy. It would be easy to tie the items in my shopping cart. So we created customer 1 and customer 2. So if I shop when I'm already logged into the site, right, it'll be easy to store my customer ID. We can grab my email address the same way it's displayed in the header. But what are we going to do if I'm shopping and I'm anonymous, right? If I put 6 of these in my cart and then I want to go back and put something else in my cart, how can we keep track of the fact that these 2 items both belong to the same user if that user isn't logged in? Because we've got these 2 different scenarios. Scenario is simple when someone's already logged into the site. But when they're not, how are we going to know that this cart item and this cart item belong to the same person? It's a bit of a complicated question, so if you think you have a suggestion, you can always, might be easier to use your mic than to use the chat. How do we let people shop anonymously but still tie multiple items to the same user if they're not logged in? I'll give you a small hint. We can use 2 classes one that we worked with in this class and one that we worked with in our last course in PHP. What class did we use for making sure our image names were unique whenever we uploaded a new product image? Right, Bensei, yes. So that's the other one. We're going to use a session. So that way, if Bensei and I are both shopping as anonymous users and we put the same product in our cart, if we use a session variable, the server can distinguish between Bensei's cart and my cart. So that's a great idea. We'll use the session so that we can distinguish the users. And when we were uploading products, what did we use to ensure some sort of unique name? We look at our product create code. How did we ensure when we were uploading photos that every file that got uploaded had a unique name? You can see it on my screen, the other class that we need to work along with sessions. Look at line 76. You got it, Nick, the GUID. So if our user is anonymous, we can generate a new GUID for each user, and then we can store that in a session variable. So that way, if we're all 22 of us are shopping at once and nobody's logged in, each one of us can generate a new GUID and we store it in the session. And that way, as we put products in our carts, they're going to be tied to this GUID that's stored in the session variable that's unique to each user. So it's a little bit complicated, but that's what we're going to need to do. Work with GUIDs and sessions. Now our site's already configured to use GUIDs. It's not configured to use sessions yet. So we'll have to add that. We'll have to add session support. So let's go to our store controller. And now let's start writing our store add to cart method. So this method is going to use post because it runs when the user submits our add to cart form, right? They click this, this will perform a form post. So we're going to call it add to cart. And we've got two parameters here. What are the two values that we're going to be submitting when we click add to cart? You can see one of the values here. The other value isn't actually visible. So if I click add to cart, what two pieces of information have to get included in that parameter list? You got it. That's right, Nick. So we're going to have an int. We called it product ID. And a second int, which we called quantity. So which product does the user want? And how many did they order? If we look in our form, we have two inputs. The hidden one called product ID and the visible one called quantity. So these names have got to match exactly. So first thing we'll do is query the DB for the product price. So we're going to take the product ID, go to the database and find the price, and we'll store it in a local variable. Then we want to create and save a new cart object. So we're going to create a new cart, and we're going to start populating the properties of the cart. So our product ID will be equal to our product ID parameter from up here. Our quantity will also come from our parameter list right here. Our price is going to come from our local variable. And we're going to timestamp it so we know when the item was put in the cart. Actually, we got to do it this way. We're going to create a variable called current date time. So we can just call a C# function datetime.now. Whoops, sorry, it's not a method, it's a property. So this gives us most of the things we need just for the moment. We'll come back to the customer ID piece with the GUID and the session. It's a bit complicated. So just for now, we'll just hard code it in as test, just to see if we can actually save an item to the cart. We will make this dynamic. Next. So then to save to the DB, we call context.carts.add. And then we call SaveChanges. So when SaveChanges runs, this actually should add a new record to the carts table. Now we haven't returned anything. So this code would run, should run, and save a new item to the cart table. What should we do after the item goes in the cart? What should the user see in the browser? We've got a couple of options. I'd like to do it the simplest way. What do you expect to see when you're shopping online and you finish putting an item in your cart? What do you see next? Yeah, let's redirect the user to a cart view. So we're not going to have an actual view for add to cart. So we're going to return, instead of returning a view directly, we're going to redirect to a new method called cart. Now this method doesn't exist, so we've got to create it. We'll just create an empty method for now that loads a blank page. I wonder if we can just do this as a string. I don't think so. Ah, okay. So we'll just return a view. We're not going to build this page yet. We'll build it after. The code on it will be kind of involved, so we'll wait to build it. We should be able to try this out now. I will upload the code so you can copy it, but I'll just go through it again. One line at a time. So when a user clicks add to cart, it's going to call this method and pass in a product ID and a quantity. We're going to go and fetch the price based on the selected product. We're going to get the current date and time. We're going to create a new cart object with the selected product and the quantity our customer entered in our form. We're going to set the current price of the product. We're going to set the current timestamp. And for now, we're just going to hard code the customer as test. We're going to add our new object to our DB set that we've declared up here. And then we're going to save the changes and redirect. So when this all runs, we should get an error in the browser that says there is no view. The view called cart is missing. That's fine. We'll then want to go and look in the cart table and see if anything actually got saved. So I'll put this code up. So this goes inside of our store controller. Here's the new link if you need it. So I'm going to try it out and see what happens now. I'll just start right from the beginning. Go back to the store. I'll pick 6 steam whistle at $3. And I'm going to click add to cart. Okay, this is actually a good sign. It's trying to load. It's redirected to my store/cart and saying the view isn't found. So that was the result we were expecting because we haven't built this view yet. Now let's go look in the database. And if I right-click my carts table and select, I now have product ID 2, my customer ID is hard-coded as test, and I ordered 6 at this date and time at a price of $3. So what if I order 2 of these? Product ID 4. I'll add those to cart. I'm also going to try it from the product details page. So if I click on the name of another product, and I'll add 4 of these. So we get the same error every time, which is fine. Okay. So that's good. So our code for adding new items to the shopping cart, it seems to be working. Now we do need to deal with this issue. It's working, but it's not complete because we haven't really resolved the issue of identifying our users uniquely. Right now, I could go into another browser and shop, and it's going to put the items in the same cart because my carts aren't really connected to a specific user. Okay, now it's 3:45. Just a question. How many of you have physics today at 4? And also, how important is it that you're in physics at 4 o'clock today? Since this is a computer studies course and you guys are computer studies students. We've made some progress. I don't want to beat you over the head, but we have more to do with this. Is there anybody who absolutely has to leave at 4 o'clock today? Or can we continue on with our cart page? Feel free to let me know in the chat. Okay. We may not be another full hour but what I'd like to do, there's 2 more things I would like to do today. Okay, thank you for the feedback. Because next week I actually want to integrate a payment gateway, and there's a little bit of setup and a bit of time. So I want to get our cart page kind of working so we can get there next week. So if you really have to go, I will record it, but if you can stay with me for a little while longer today, that would be good. Because we need to deal with the username piece and integrating the GUID and our session so we can uniquely identify each cart. So we're not hard coding in the customer ID. And once we have that, we then want to build out the view. So this view will actually display the items that are in the cart. So I'm hoping we don't need a full hour for it. We've been working for a while now. So I'd like to take a short break and then come back at 4 o'clock. And I'm hoping that we can wrap those things up by about 4:30, if that's okay. So I'm going to push again to GitHub. And I'll stop the recording. We'll resume at 4 with fixing up the customer ID piece first and then building our cart page. And then we should be in good shape to continue next week. We might even be able to get remove from cart today. If not, we'll do it next week. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break here. I'm going to push up to Git right now.